February is officially over, and that means I have a reading wrap-up for you. Hello friends, I'm Rosa, welcome. So today I am gonna go through every single book that I read in February. This video is probably gonna be shorter than a lot of my other reading wrap-ups, not because I've read fewer books, but because one of them contained 8 books. one of them was a series, and I read 8 books as part of that series. So it'll be probably a little bit shorter than some of my other reading wrap-ups, but we'll see how I do. I feel like I say that every single video and they always turn out to be like 30-40 minutes long. Anywho, as for stats, I got a lot of 5-star reads this month. Like a lot, but we'll get to that. And I think I read above or more than 7,000 pages, which is quite a lot on average. That is 250 pages a day. You could argue that it's been a pretty good reading month, yeah. But enough about statistics, let's talk about these books. You will find timestamps to all of the books in the this little timeline down here if you want to skip past one, or if there's just one you want to see specifically, you can find them down here in the timeline, or there's a little, I think it's over here. There's like a little button you can click. Anyway, let's get started. I'm gonna go through the first one of the Patreon picks for February, which was Gilded by Marissa Meyer. This is a young adult fantasy with fairy tale vibes. It's a romance. We also have ghosts in it, so there are paranormal vibes as well. And this one, like I said, was chosen by my patrons as my book club's first pick of the month. If you want to check out the book club, I'll leave a link to it in the pinned comment down below. But I want to talk just a little bit about this. I did cover it in a spoilery vlog. I don't even remember fully what I said in that vlog. This took me a lot longer to read than I wanted it to. But we follow Cyrilda, who is touched by the god of lies, or the god of storytelling. I'm not really sure what kind of god she is. Anyway, Cyrilda is really, really good at telling stories. She's so good even that one day she comes across the Earl King, who's like a big villain in this world, and she tells him a lie that he believes. But because of this, sure, she gets away the first time she comes across him, but he comes back because he wants Cyrilda to come with him to this castle that he lives in with all his ghosts. So she does, and she finds herself kind of trapped there and needs help from someone, and suddenly this guy shows up as well. And I know this sounds super vague and super confusing, but I'm pretty sure if I started giving you more details, you'd be more confused than you are right now, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. I liked the vibes in this book. Like, it was dark. It was like dark fairy tale. There were skeletons, undead people, ribcage carriages, lanterns made out of bones. It was very dark and gritty in that way. Not like J. Kristoff gritty, but still a little bit gritty, I would say. Language is still fine in this one, by the way, just want to point that out. It's still young adult, but I like the vibes. However, I wasn't really totally vibing with the whole story. I felt like it was long drawn at times. So while I did enjoy it, it just took me longer than I wanted it to get through the book, because it didn't grip me in a way that made me like read half a book in a day. I don't know. And it was hard to kind of, it was written in a way that was kind of hard to guess where the story was going, because everything was just sort of laid out for you. There were certain things that were hinted at that you could sort of guess, but there wasn't a lot of that. And when it comes to stories and kind of guessing where it's gonna go, I like that. I like the moment, like the reveal. I like that. I like that you can guess your way to it and then be like, oh, but why didn't I see that coming? And this just kind of didn't give me that. There were a lot of stories that were repeated as well, some of the stories that she's telling. I would have liked a map as well, just to help me figure out where she was in the world too. So I didn't fully enjoy this, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad book either. It's just definitely thicker than it's probably needed. So I ended up giving this somewhere between 3 and 4 stars, but I've actually more or less decided not to really give my books stars in videos anymore. You can see them over on Goodreads if you want to, because I always write them there, but as for like here in videos, I think I'm just gonna not. However, did enjoy it, just not as much as I really wanted to, and it was a little bit long drawn at times, so not my best read this month. But that doesn't say a lot because I had a lot of good reads. So Next up we have Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. Oh gosh, still don't fully know how to summarize this. This is adult sci-fi, and it is, well, also fantasy, I would say. It's definitely, like, it has elements of sci-fi. We travel from, I don't even know, there's something about stars. Oh gosh, I should have summarized this as soon as I finished the book, because I feel like I'm gonna be a little bit trapped now. Anyway, we follow a girl who is a woman, sorry. We follow a woman who is teak, which means that she has the ability to kind of sing to the ocean, so she can calm it if she wants to. We also follow Serapio? I think his name's Serapio. Yes. Who's a young man he's gone through some stuff, his mom has done some stuff to him, and he's kind of supposed to become a god at some point. And Serapio finds himself on Shiala's ship. I forgot what her name was. Shiala or something like that. So Shiala has this ship where there's a whole crew as well. The crew is kind of... There's some racism in there, I want to say, because they're not really looking at Shiala with full respect because of her teak blood. They're scared of Serapio as well because he kind of keeps to himself. He only comes out now and then to kind of talk to them. And there's also a lot of religion over this because they have like cultists and stuff. I don't know. Where am I going with the summary? This is really difficult to summarize. The point is, anyway, that Shiala has to transport Serapio from one place to another because Serapio has to be at this place at a certain time to kind of fulfill his destiny, if you will. And this was, while fascinating at times, I also felt like it was so confusing to me. It was very epic, but still very confusing to me, and that is probably on me and not on the book. I also read the first 50 pages months before I read the rest of the book. I still remembered what happened in those pages, so I still remembered, but it just took me such a long time. Like, even back then, I didn't finish it because for some reason it just didn't catch me, and it still didn't fully catch me. I read it until I finished it, but it still didn't fully catch me, and I think it's because I was just confused at times. So I'm probably gonna reread this at some point. There's a sequel coming out sometime soon, I think. I think around May, and people love this, so I need to know, like, I think I need to reread it to fully understand it and get over my confusion about the plot. It did help a little bit after I looked up some pictures of them, because it helps me to kind of put a face on a name. But for a while I was really confused. So I did enjoy it. It was action-filled, like, it was definitely not slow-paced. There was stuff happening all the time, and there was a lot of, like, tension at times, and I don't know, it's a very fascinating world to be in as well. I want to see more of it too, so I think I'm gonna reread it at some point because it was a very surprisingly fast read actually. But my consensus right now is that after having read it for the first time, I'm a little bit confused. So that's what I got for you for this one. I did enjoy it, just a little bit confused. Then for my 24-hour readathon, I read first, well, it's not the first one that I read. First one that I want to talk about is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Sáenz. I really don't know how to pronounce his last name. I have no clue. Anyway, this is a book that takes place in the 1980s, I think 1984, and we follow Aristotle, also known as Ari, and Dante. We actually only follow Aristotle, like everything is written from his point of view. And the book is essentially about these two guys becoming friends when they're very young and then growing up together and kind of finding themselves, figuring out what their spot in the world is and figuring out what they identify themselves as, and like both like with themselves, their sexuality, but also heritage wise, like because they're both half Mexicans as well. At least I believe I remember them being both half Mexican. And that's essentially what it's about. It's about friendship turning into something more and two guys learning about themselves and exploring, like experiencing things and exploring the world and just learning about themselves. So it's a coming of age story, but it's also a coming out story, and it was both funny and charming, sad at times. I had a really, really good time reading this. It was very touching and very lovable. The characters are, like, the friendship is so, or just their relationship. Let's just call it a relationship. It's just that most of the book is while they're friends. It's just, I like their chemistry a lot. I like their back and forth talk a lot. It was humorous and charming. It is definitely not a very heavy read. You could read this very quickly. I think this was actually, like, if you're interested in young adult contemporary, which is this is, contemporary romance. I would say that this is probably a good book to get out of a reading slump with because it's so fast-paced. The dialogue is like really back and forth extremely quickly, and there's always something happening in the book too. It's like all the useless fluff was just kind of taken out of this one. So I would say that it's a pretty good book if you're finding yourself in a reading slump. It's also very PG, but I will say that there's a few trigger warnings for this one. Although they're not described in detail per se, I would still look into them just in case. But I really enjoyed this one. I'm happy that my patrons chose this for me for my TBR. I'm sorry that I haven't read the second one, but we'll get to why, okay? We'll get to why, but I really enjoyed this one. I had a very good time with it. So if you want to see me talk about it more, I'll leave a card up in the corner for my 24-hour readathon where I read this one along with the next two books. I probably talk about them a little bit more while reading them, but also afterwards when I summarize the books that I've read. But I enjoyed this quite a lot, so I understand the awards on the front cover now. They're not as annoying to me anymore, but still a little bit annoying. Next up, also during my 24-hour readathon, I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, which was my book club's second pick for February. And this is adult contemporary, but also fantasy. We have ghosts in it, so paranormal vibes. There's also romance, friendship, arguably found family, I would say. In this book, we follow Wallace. Yes. Nailed it. Okay. Who is a bit of if you know A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge. He's a little bit like him. He just doesn't like people, but like in a rude way. He doesn't realize that he's rude either, I don't think. I think he just tunnel visions on his job, for example. So he's just kind of like, he's not a very pleasant person. We basically start out with him firing someone, and then 2 days later he has a heart attack and he dies. So Wallace finds himself at his funeral where he finds out that people don't really have anything nice to say about him. And there's also a strange woman at this funeral who, while everyone else can't see him or hear him, she can. So he starts talking to her and she takes him to this place, a tea shop in the woods that is owned by a man called Hugo, where he's basically supposed to, like, Hugo is supposed to help Wallace cross over, if you will. And this could take a couple of days, it could take weeks, or it could take months. So that is basically what it's about, but there's more to it than that. Than just that. I just don't want to spoil anything other than something happens at this tea shop and Wallace is basically given like 7 days to figure this out because he's been there for too long. So he has 7 days all of a sudden to fulfill everything or to do everything that he wanted to do, although he's still chained to this tea shop, mind you. Like, he can't really go many places, but he has 7 days to figure this out and to kind of accept that he has to cross over. So yes, that's what it's about. There's also a love story in there. Not a spoiler, it's between Wallace and Hugo. And while I feel like, for me, it's healthy for me to read about death, like having that subject in my books, I didn't really enjoy this that much. I don't know what it is. I am fully confident that this little guy right here, House in the Cerulean Sea, also by TJ Klune, is gonna vibe with me, but this one didn't that much. It felt at times like TJ Klune just kind of wanted there to be humor in it. Like he just kind of had to throw some jokes in there and some funny scenarios and stuff. And for some reason, I don't know if it was because I was reading this during the 24-hour readathon, but I didn't really, the humor didn't vibe with me. I don't know what it was. I'm probably gonna give it another shot at some point, just because I feel like it's weird. Like, I'm kind of like, is it because I was reading it through for the 24-hour readathon, or is it just because his humor doesn't vibe with me? I don't really know, but it didn't really vibe with me. There's something about the ending as well that I can't really get into because spoilers, but how can you say this without spoiling anything? I didn't fully I didn't feel like the ending was necessary or the way that it ended was necessary. I don't know how to say this in a non-spoilery way, but yeah. I just didn't fully enjoy this. I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping that I would. Got a little bit annoyed with the humor now and then, but as for the story, it was lovely. The writing style wasn't bad in any way. It's just the random humor at times just kind of got a little bit. Not for me. I don't know what it is, but yeah. Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Moving on to a contemporary romance. A full-on adult contemporary romance that I also read during my 24-hour readathon. And it was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And I'm just going to tell you right now that this is everything that I'm looking for in an adult contemporary romance. Everything. This book is everything. This book is about our girl whose name is Olive. Yes, Olive. And Olive has been dating a guy that her best friend is very interested in, and Olive is not very interested in him, but it's like her best friend doesn't fully understand that. So to convince her friend, her name is An, by the way, to convince An that Olive is completely over this guy, she tells her that she's on a date. However, Olive is also a bit of a workaholic, so she's actually not on a date, she's at her school. But, to her surprise, An is also at the school on the day, and to kind of avoid being busted for lying, she decides to kiss the first guy that she basically sees at the school, which turns out to be this dude right here whose name is Adam. And Adam is known for being a moody, very, very tall and very big professor at the school that nobody likes because he's quite mean. So one thing leads to another, and Olive and Adam kind of find themselves in a bit of a situation and decide to start fake dating, which, as you know, is always a good choice. So yes, and that's essentially what this book is about. So we have some grumpy Sunshine in there. She is the Sunshine. He is very, very grumpy all the time. And it's also actually based off Reylo fanfic, which, I mean, you can kind of tell a little bit from the cover. I don't mind that too much. Just want to say my problem comes with, and we'll talk a little bit about that in regards to the next book. My problem with fanfic comes when it's about actual people, not so much characters. I don't mind that, so I still just, I didn't think about it when reading this, to be honest. But this book is charming. It's funny, it's self-aware, it has massive rom-com vibes. I could see this being turned into a very funny movie. It's not necessarily like a super realistic book, but what rom-com really is. Like, if you want to read realistic adult contemporary romance, I would probably go into something a little bit more like Mariana Zapata. But while being unrealistic at times, this still works. I love this so much. It has charming characters, likable characters, the writing style vibed with me, so I just really loved it. It was just so good. I feel like I've said that so many times. But also, one important thing, I finally found Jeremy, who's in this book. He's the dude that Olive dated, that An is basically in love with. He's a redhead without freckles, and it's the first time I've come across a redhead without freckles in any of my books. We do exist. I just want to say it. Anyway, so I was like, and it was also turned into a whole thing, by the way. Like, Jeremy's actually proud of being a redhead without freckles, which I thought was cute. I don't know, it's a me thing, I suppose. Anyway, so this was a really good time. I decided to tab basically almost every time she mentions that Adam is big in some way, so the orange tabs is basically what that is. But this was so much fun. I would highly recommend this if you're looking for like a fun, light, adult contemporary romance with just, I don't know, funny scenarios. If you want to laugh and smile one day, pick this up, because it was so much fun. So yes, and that is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Next up, we have one more adult contemporary book, which is, spoiler alert, by Olivia Dade. And this is when we're going to talk a little bit more about fanfic. So this book is essentially about two people. We have our lead girl, who is a geologist, and in her free time she writes fanfic about a couple in this very, very popular TV series. Our other lead person is our lead dude, whose name I forgot, but who is actually an actor on this show, but in his free time he also writes fanfic about this couple in this TV show. Yes, he writes fanfic about basically a character that he plays. That's the thing. He feels like the showrunners don't treat the characters like they're not true to character, because this TV show is based off of books. So he writes other scenarios with them on this page, on this site. And the two don't know each other in real life, but they're actually super good friends online. So she doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know who she is. But then one day our girl posts a selfie. Oh yeah, an important thing is that, and I'm using a word that the author herself wrote in the book, but she describes herself as fat. So she posts a picture of herself doing cosplay as half of this couple, half of this TV couple, and people are quite mean to her in the comments. So our lead dude is not having it and basically stands up for her online and also invites her on a date, very publicly invites her on a date. So the two meet, and that's where I'm gonna leave it. My problem with this was... Okay, so if you haven't figured out who this is based off of yet, I'm gonna give you one more hint. The TV show is described as the world's most popular TV show. It's based off of books. It's about this gorgeous guy who is in love with a character who's described as not very beautiful, like, okay, straight up described as ugly in the books, but the actress who plays her is actually really beautiful, conventionally beautiful. So that's all the hints I'm gonna give you. If you haven't figured it out by now, it's Game of Thrones, and we're talking about Jaime and Brienne. So... It would have been fine if it was fanfiction about them. My problem comes when the fanfiction is about real life people, and this dude is supposed to be Nikolai Coster-Waldau, who plays Jaime. So it's no longer about the characters, but it's about the actor playing the character. And I find that really weird. Like, I can't... He's a person. He's an actual real life breathing person. I think he has children and is married, and there's just some stuff in this book that I wouldn't feel comfortable if someone wrote that stuff about me. So it felt a bit like a self-insertive fantasy at times, and that made me super uncomfortable. I unfortunately did not realize that this was a fanfic about Nikolai Coster-Waldau until I was about 65% into it. The damage had been done. And I went on Goodreads just to see, because I wasn't really fully vibing with it, but I wanted to see what other people were saying, and someone wrote very clearly in their review that it was fanfiction. I was like, wait, hold on a minute. Oh no. And everything just kind of fell into place. Like, I suddenly understood, I suddenly saw it. I was like, I am not touching that book again, no. So I DNF'd it at 65. I read the last 2 pages just to see how it ended, and that's where I'm gonna leave it, because I just don't feel comfortable reading fanfic about actual people. I don't think I can fully rate a book when I haven't finished it. 35% is still a big chunk. I will say though, there were cute inserts in between the chapters that were taken from both like chats that they'd had, but also manuscripts and some of the fanfic that they'd written, which was quite funny. I actually think I liked those bits better than their own chapters, to be honest. But yeah, that's all I got to say about spoiler alert. So moving on to the last, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk about this. Give me a moment. I need to calm down. Give me a moment. Okay, I just want to make sure that I don't get overly excited and forget all the things that I wanted to say about the series. So without spoiling anything, of course, but I'm calm now. It's fine. But the last books that I read in February were, or I wouldn't say last, the last ones that I want to talk about are Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is an old copy, by the way. I bought this in 2016, so all the silver on the letters is kind of half gone, if you will, but this is, at first at least, I would say it's young adult for the first 4 books plus Assassin's Blade, and then it kind of turns into something a little bit more new adult like from Empire Storms and moving forward. So keep that in mind, but I feel like it also makes sense because the first book came out in like 2013 or something, and if you started reading this in 2013, you would have gotten a little bit older by the time Empire Storms came out, so it kind of makes sense to me that, or 2012 even, I think. So it makes sense to me that the books would kind of mature with the audience, if you will. They are what I would consider high fantasy for young adult and new adult. There's fae and magic, assassins, pirates, a lot of different witches as well, a lot of different creatures in this, like little fairy folk and trees that move and talk and big birds that you can fly on, big eagles that you can fly on, and also wyverns and stuff. There's a lot in this. Like, this is so many things. There's politics in it. There's a lot. I'm gonna stop myself before royals as well. I'm gonna stop myself before I accidentally spoil anything, but this is a lot. This is a lot. And it starts out very small and turns into something more. And I feel like that is what's so fascinating about the series, how many twists and turns it takes. But as for the first book, we follow the world's greatest assassin. Her name is Selena Sardothian, and she has been stuck in these salt mines as a slave for 9 months, when one day the Crown Prince of Ardalan shows up and wants her as his champion for this thing that his father, the king, is throwing. So they've invited these different nobles and they all have their different champions, and he wants Selena to be his. The winner of this tournament gets to be the king's champion and gets to basically work for the king. Selena doesn't really see a way out of this because the only way she can get out of the salt mines is basically to say yes. So she suddenly finds herself at the royal palace entering this tournament, and I don't know how much else I can say other than it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. Like, that doesn't even... I don't really know. If you've read the books, you fully know why I feel frustrated that I can't say more than that about them, but that really doesn't cover what the series actually is. So I'm just gonna not, because I don't want to spoil anything. And I'm sure most of you have actually read these because they're very, very popular books, but I still don't want to risk anything. For those of you that haven't, this is like the perfect series to kind of ease you into fantasy because the world gets built bigger and bigger book after book. There are more and more characters introduced book after book, but in a way that doesn't get overwhelming in any way. Everything is kind of developed with the books as well, so like it kind of eases you into it slowly. I read them very, very quickly. I read the first 4 back in 2016, and then I reread them and read the last ones as well now. And it didn't, like, even though I'm definitely more of a practice fantasy reader now, it didn't feel overwhelming at any point. There's a lot of characters in these, but you remember them. They're all very unique to themselves and well described and have their own personalities and stuff, so yeah, I don't really know. And everything just kind of comes together as well. Like, everything just makes sense. Everything just kind of, like, suddenly something's mentioned that happened in the first book and you're like, oh, right, well that makes sense, yeah. This has a badass female character that kicks butt and is sarcastic and dangerous and scary, and I love her to bits. Selena is amazing. And while she may be considered the world's greatest assassin, she's not perfect because no person out there is. So she makes mistakes as well. She's personality-wise, she's not perfect either. She's not skill-wise, she's not perfect either. I don't know, I like that in characters because this is why I don't like Superman as a superhero, because he's too perfect. His only weakness is kryptonite, you know? Like, that doesn't feel right with me. It doesn't seem very realistic. Not that, you know, the laser eyes are realistic, but you know what I mean. Like, it's just it's a bit too perfect. Another thing that I find very fascinating about Throne of Glass is that the first book here, so Throne of Glass, is Sarah J Maas's debut, and you see her writing improve so much throughout the series. Like, even by book 3, which is Heir of Fire, or just like book 2, it's already gotten so much better, but by Heir of Fire you really see like her writing style be so much closer to what it is now, but it like develops in a very, very organic way throughout reading this, and I really enjoyed that too. If you keep an eye on it, you'll know exactly what I mean. So I found that very fascinating as well while reading this. And I think one of the things about Throne of Glass and the whole like turning it from young adult to new adult, yes, it's fitting because the audience also came closer to new adult age by the time the 5th book was out, but it also fits Sarah J Maas a little bit better than writing young adult. I feel like she just does so well writing new adult or adult, so it was very fitting for her too. And yeah, the characters, the relationships, the world, I miss this still. I've read Kingdom of Ash 3 days ago. I still have a knot in my chest because I miss the world and the characters so much. I miss the relationships and the banter and just the attitude and everything. This is just such a good series. Yes, it's 8 books. Don't be scared. I promise you it's worth it. Even if the last one is like 980 pages. It's fast-paced, it's back and forth between the areas that they're in that book, but it doesn't get frustrating at any point. At least I didn't feel like that. I just want everyone to read this. Thank you. That's all. And I will note that there's 7 books that are, if we start from Throne of Glass, there are 7 books, but there is also the collection of short stories that is called Assassin's Blade, and if you want to read that, you don't technically have to, but if you want to, because you want more content from this world, I would highly recommend that you read it, I would say between Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows, so between the third and the fourth book, but you could also read it before Throne of Glass. However, there's some characters in there that you have to remember until like the fourth book, so that's why I'm saying between Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows. I read it between Queen of Shadows and Empire Storms, just simply because my plan was to read the first 4 books in February and then the other ones in April. I just changed my mind about my TBR, basically, because I couldn't leave the world anyway. But I would have gotten more out of it if I'd read it before Queen of Shadows. So I highly recommend, I would probably recommend that you read it actually between the third and the fourth one, just to be able to remember the names, but I wouldn't recommend that you just skip it. So yeah, I hope, if you have any questions about Throne of Glass, let me know. But I hope that I've somehow convinced you of the amazingness that is this series without having to spoil anything, because it's so many things, and it would be a shame to kind of miss out on it, if you will, if you're basing the whole series off of the first book, for example, or if you're scared because it's 8 books. I just feel like as a fantasy reader, if you like fantasy and romance and relationships and just action, like this has everything. So of course you have to vibe with her writing style, that's important, but honestly I feel like most people do. So I don't know, I just would highly recommend Throne of Glass. I gave so many of the books full on 5 stars. The only ones that I didn't was, I think the first one, Assassin's Blade, and also Tower of Dawn. But that's just a personal thing with Tower of Dawn. And also Throne of Glass because it's her first book. It's a debut, and you can feel that when reading it, but it's still good. It's still a 4.5 for me, so it's still really good. It's just it's not close enough to perfect that I would give it a 5 stars, but the rest, amazing all the way through. So yeah, that was my reading wrap up, and oh gosh, I really hope I didn't miss anything. I decided to start taking notes again for these, so I really hope that I didn't miss anything, but if you got any questions, let me know in the comments. Of course, if you want spoilers, you have to mark it as spoiler in the comment, but I think that's all I got. So let me know what you've read through February, or if you're reading anything exciting right now. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned and you got some opinions you want to share, you can do it down below in the comments section. If you want to check out the book club, like I said, there's a link to it in the pinned comment at the top of the comment section as well. We're reading Truly Devious, which is right there in here in March, so I'm gonna get started on that soon, and I'm super excited to cover it in a spoilery vlog. If you want to see that, it'll be over on Patreon. But as for now, that's all I got, so I hope you all enjoyed this reading wrap up. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and also if you want to hang out and nerd out about books with me and everyone else in the comments, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. But again, that's all I got for you today, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!